Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Savavedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanantam Satguru Pranatoshmaham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome, my friends, to our Panchadasi class. We begin from where we stopped last time. Last time we looked into the verse 24, the macro and the macrocosm, yeah, aspect of the universe. When prana, the jiva, identifies with an individual, before we saw the manifestation unfolding as the causal body in which the eternal prana jiva unfolds. So once the jiva, yeah, the prana jiva identifies with an individual, prana jiva is present as what? As the macrocosm causal body, in which all and everything, all souls are unified in the overall soul. So, but once a prana de jiva, this principle, this eternal jiva, identifies with an specific individual subtle body, and then it becomes the Taijasa. It's called Taijasa, the shining one. So it's the jiva assuming an individual, an individual journey as an individual soul. So the subtle body is called then Taijasa, the shining one, or the dreamer, because it dreams in the dream world, the mental, emotional world of thoughts, feelings, and determinations, and so on. When Ishvara identifies with all subtle bodies, it's known as Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the golden egg, is the universal and subtle body, the cosmic subtle body, which is present in the scripture as something in the form, elliptic form of an egg. It is the subtle body of the entire cosmos. Okay, so and then it says that Ishvara, Ishvara. What is Ishvara? Ishvara is consciousness. And consciousness. It says here from this angle, consciousness apparently identified with all subtle bodies. It becomes Ishvara. So we know that Ishvara is an appearance. It's not really real. No, Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagata, they are part of Mithya, this apparent order of reality. So when consciousness apparently identifies with the entire subtle body, the cosmic subtle body, and then it is what we call Ishvara. So it says here that Ishvara identifies with all subtle bodies, but the more easier to understand this statement is when consciousness apparently identifies with the cosmic collective, the subtle body, which is called the Hiranyagarbha. Now, so it's Ishvara, okay? Ishvara is called the universal subtle body, the golden egg, okay? So, and then there is this controversial statement here. If both are born out of the subtle body, what is difference? Ishvara is consciousness identified with everything, and pure consciousness identified with nothing. So we know that pure consciousness does not identify with anything. Pure consciousness apparently identified with all subtle bodies is called Ishvara. So Ishvara is just an appearance. Okay, we say that it's consciousness apparent identified with individual subtle body, and then we have what we call the jiva. Likewise, consciousness apparently identified with the entire universal, collective, the entire subtle body of the cosmos. It becomes Ishvara. So we are talking about different levels of Isvara. Isvara in its causal formation, let's say, as the macrocosmic causal body, the totality of all vasanas of all Jivas. Everything is contained, and then we say this is Isvara as the macrocosmic causal body. Okay, so now Ishwara as the macrocosm subtle body is called what? It's called the golden egg, this elliptic egg, also known as Hiranyagarbha. Okay, so both are a phenomenon of identification with the subtle body. As we know, the Jiva is easy for us understanding because it is our very experience. We identify with our subtle body, so we are very much identified with our emotions, our feelings, our memories, our thoughts, our notions and ideas. We are identified with our physiological prana functions. So we identify with everything that belongs to the subtle body. We identify with the organs of actions and the organs of reception. So as a Jiva, we know that we tend to identify with the subtle body. Yeah? So when we identify with subtle body, there is nothing new for us. So we know that Jiva is consciousness identified with a specific individual subtle body. So how about Ishvara? No? Ishvara is consciousness identified with everything. Just so we see Ishvara, no, as the body of the macrocosmic causal body, the body of the macrocosm subtle body. It means to say as if Ishvara is identified. It's not that it's identified. That's what Ishvara is. Ishvara is the totality of the manifestation. The manifestation occurs in three levels, in the causal, in the subtle, and then it growths to become the physical material universe. So when it appears as the universe, we call it Jagata, and we say that Ishvara is also Jagat, né? The end process of grossification in which we have this physical material universe in which we physical jivas can work our karmas. Okay, are we following? So far, so good. David?
Arlindo, I want to ask, I don't understand clearly. We can say that the sum of all the subtle body of all the jivas is Ishvara. Can we say that? Or
Yeah.
maybe I don't understand.
You see, on the physical level, we have infinite numbers of names and forms and colors. You know, all configurations of names and forms of the universe, we say that, oh, this is the world, this is the cosmos, this is the universe. And then what is Ishvara? Ishvara is not a specific name and form, right? Because Ishvara is not only the cause, but it is the cosmos manifest in physicality, you know? So Ishvara is a totality, and we develop as we grow spiritually this vision of God as everything manifests. And the scripture here invites us to understand that the totality of everything manifests up to the subtle level is also Ishvara. The totality of everything manifests as the macrocosmic causal body is also Ishvara. Okay, Ishvara in its three bodies. Okay, the causal, the subtle, and as above, as below, the Jiva. Yeah, the same way it has three bodies: the causal body that calls the subtle and calls the physical material body. You understand? It's the same principle. It's very, very simple. Okay, it's just a way for us to look into creation and understand these three orders, these three bodies from the standpoint of the macrocosm and the microcosm, macro and micro, okay? As the title of this paragraph of this section says. Okay, consciousness identified with a particular subtle body is a jiva. Taijasa is the individual because it only has knowledge of its own subtle body. So we know Isvara is pure knowledge, is pure yana. So we could say Isvara is a yani, is the highest yani. Why? Because he's made of pure sattva, he knows everything. And just imagine if he would not know that he is all knowledge, the knowledge of everything, and he is the manifestation of everything. Everything is the body of Ishvara. So Ishvara is the knowledge of everything. But the Taijasa, which is the subtle body of the individual soul, produces this Jiva Atma, that has only the knowledge of its own subtle body. So I wish I could really know which anybody around me really thinks about me, But we better not. No? It's better we don't know, right, Elizabeth? And and thanks God we don't have this mind of Ishvara. We are not omniscient. We have now I know everybody's thoughts and anybody thinks about anything. No, Ishvara, Taijasa is an individual because it has knowledge of its own subtle body alone, only. Yeah? And even to know, yeah, everything that goes on in our mind it's not always easy. And most of the psychological work we do is try to get some a little bit more clarity of our thoughts and emotions, and feelings and so on. But there is a clear identification. I'm identified, to my thoughts, what I believe, and my emotions, and so on. Okay, carry on. The verse 25 says, Ishvara sees all bodies as itself. Taijasas are only identified with themselves. So they see difference. Yeah, Taijasa, the Jiva in its subtle body, in its mental, emotional, intellectual body. So it knows what it knows, but basically it knows only what's going on in its body mind, in its mind, let's say. So while Ishvara is the knowledge of all subtle bodies, Taijasa only knows its own subtle body, therefore it's totally identified with it, and they see difference. Ishvara does not see difference because Ishvara as consciousness as if identified with everything. So compassion is the ability to develop this wisdom of spiritual wisdom, so that we see that every name and form is Ishvara, and as a devote of Ishvara, so we start developing empathy and love to all expressions of Ishvara. Like we see in the Gita, Ishvara, is the good and the bad and the cruel and the saint, all those aspects. When Krishna asks Ishvara, show your real face to me, and then Ishvara shows, the full spectrum of the most evil to the most saint. So the Jiva sees difference. Ishvara is just one single unity, manifesting these three levels: causal, subtle, and physical. And of course, it sees no difference. And as we see the world as Ishvara sees, the more we'll feel love. Love is the ability to see the oneness in everything and everyone. So love is, I think that is a good definition, the ability to see the oneness in everything which is manifested here. The verse 26, to provide individual jivas with objects of enjoyment and make their bodies fit for enjoyment, awareness as Ishvara calls each of the subtle elements to share a part of each of the other subtle elements. So now we are moving from the subtle into the physical. Okay, so we're gonna move. So there in the subtle body, we are dealing with the original five subtle elements. No, the tamatras, they are there. So there is where space is space, absolutely space. Okay, so that's where air is air, where fire is fire, water is water. You know, there is nothing mixing up there. It's in its most purity, but this purity is only possible on the subtle level. On the subtle level, this exists. On the macrocosm causal level, it exists as knowledge, as an idea, okay, as a potential, and then it gratifies to the subtle, and then the subtle, the five subtle elements, they manifest, okay? And then now we're going to see how Isvara bring and why, what's the motivation for Isvara to bring about this grossification of the five subtle elements by cutting it in half, no? And making each one of the elements to hold its purity as 50% of itself, and then to add the other four elements 25%, 25%, 25%. In other words, the space element is going to hold, okay, now I want to grossify, I want to become visible. Here I am invisible, and I am of no help for as long as I am invisible. I'm too subtle. I want to grossify because I want to create a stage which made out of material elements for the Jivas to enjoy their karma, to process their karmas. You understand? So I need to grossify. So as I grossify, Isvara comes to space and say, hey, space, I'm sorry. I know you are very, very proud because you are the most subtle, the most pervasive, but I need to grossify you. So I'm going to take half of your purity and keep intact, one half, okay? And then the other half, I'm going to divide in four parts. And I'm going to invite the other four subtle elements. So I'm combining half of pure space with 1/8 of the total here, no? 1/8 of each one of the others. 4 1/8 makes one half. No? So I have one half of pure space, and then 1/8, 1/8, 1/8 means to say another one half, and then I have the grossification of space, in which space is no longer absolutely pure, but it's grossified by considering half of itself to a bit of the other four elements. So now we have what? Now we have the physical space. Okay, you say, wow, what we're talking about? The physical space, but this space does not seems to be very physical, because it's still so subtle, okay? But it is already grossified to become the physical space, the physical material space, which serves as the container to receive, to hold, to create room, for the other five subtle elements as they grossify. So how air is going to grossify? Isvara is going to come to him and say, okay, so this is the deal. Everybody has to grossify here. You hold 50% of your subtle, pure element as air. And now the other half, you're going to give it away to space, fire, water, and earth. And there we go, boom. We have the air, the physical material air. This air that we experience here is not pure air. This air is 50% air mixed up with 25% of each one of the other elements. You understand? They come from the subtle, they are pure, and then they grossify to present these five elements as we know. The same thing with fire, with water, and with earth. Okay, the earth is there, is the densest, but it's very subtle. Okay, because it's still like pure, and then the earth has to concede half of itself and make room for 1 quarter, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, or 25%, 25, 25, 25 to make 50% plus 50%. Now we have the earth. And the earth we have, as we know, it's growthfied and it's easier for us to understand and conceive that this earth contains water, contains fire, contains air, and contains space. It's easier for us to understand that. It's a little bit more challenging to understand from the standpoint of perception that the space we experience here contains earth, fire, water, and air. You understand? It's a little bit more challenging, but that's the way space can really come to this physical order to serve as the container in which all other elements, all other growthfied elements can be accommodated. Okay, so far so good. To provide individual jivas with objects of enjoyment and make their bodies fit for enjoyment, awareness or consciousness, as Isvara, the Lord, the intelligent Lord of this universe, calls each of the subtle elements to share a part of each to the other subtle elements, just as I have explained, okay? So is that clear, the way it divides, it splits and combines and growthfies from the cause to the physical material? Okay. Consciousness plus the causal body, the cause and subtle bodies, is not sufficient for experience. So we understand consciousness comes because Maya goes there and starts really playing with consciousness until it produces something, you know, some projection, superimposition consciousness, and there we have a cosmos, a universe. So consciousness, when Maya, you know, affects consciousness, and then we have the causal body of the universe and the subtle body. But once we have the causal body, you know, where the intention, where the knowledge, and where the potential for creation is, you know, the verb and so on. And then once the subtle bodies are created, you know, yet that is not sufficient for what? For the jiva to process their karma. So what do we need? We need to growthify the elements to bring about the material, physical 5 elements, you know, and from these 5 primary elements, Isvara start mixing up and create infinite numbers of names, colors, and form, and other elements, the chemical elements and all kinds of elements. Everything comes from these 5 elements, growthfied as we know it. Okay, they are not pure space, air, fire, what? They are not pure. They are combination. They come, they growthify, and they become the physical elements as we know it. So why Isvara does that? Because to have an idea of a creation, to have the potential, to have the energy, to have, you know, everything going to send it into manifestation. But yet, you need to send it to manifestation. You need to create the physical material world in which the jiva, the enjoyer, you know, that sometimes in most of the case becomes a sufferer, you know, the agent, the experiencer knower is there to play with Jagata, okay? We need Isvara, the creator, and then jiva comes into this creation and all other objects. And then jiva, only then this material universe, cosmos, is created. So, and then we have the complete creation, manifestation, which Jagat now is growthfied, manifest, and jiva can experience the world, and in this process can purify and can grow or can decline as well, as we know. So therefore, consciousness plus the causal and the subtle realms are not enough. It's not sufficient for experience. Isvara requires to growthify, create the material elements, and the gross body of the cosmos and the gross body of the Jivas, the macrocosmic body, the gross microcosm body of the Jivas, okay? And then the sense organs, which are in the subtle body, minus the physical sense instruments, are useless. The sense organs which are in the subtle body, as we know, minus the physical instruments. So we have the physical instruments. We know that they are connected with the organs, the organs of perception, let's say, and the instruments of perception. So they are connected. So we have the organs, but without the physical instruments of perceptions, the ear, the nose, the eyes, without the physical instruments, the subtle body, which is composed by 18 mouths, as we say, the 5 organs of actions, the 5 organs of perception, the 5 pranas, and then the mind, the intellect, and the ego. So this subtle body, this subtle body is not enough. It needs to have a physical instrument. It needs to have a physical body, a gross body, okay? The sense organs, which are the subtle body minus the physical sense instrument, are useless to make experience to happen. For experience to happen, you need to have a subtle body, the subtle organs of experience, and the physical organs, the physical instruments of perception, reception, and action. You understand? So we need to complete it. So once the creation is complete, it gets to once the creation gets to the subtle, what is the subtle? Once the creation gets to the subtle, Isvara has to create the gross elements out of the subtle elements and fashion a physical body out of them so that the Jivas can work out their karma. Jivas are machineries, or they are, it's an organism, intelligent organism designed to process vasanas, to process, to keep coming here with all our vasanas, and then we process and purify, until we develop a very, very pure mind to understand the whole game, this samsara game. So Isvara needs to create gross elements out of the cell to fashion the physical body and the jagat, and then the Jivas can work their karma. The physical body is a counter across which Jiva transacts its business in the world. So we have the subtle body. The subtle body is not an experiencing entity. It's very important to understand. The subtle body, okay, is a kind of a Jiva. It's called Taijasa, the one who dreams. He dreams what? The content of its mind, the contents of its vasana, okay? But it's not really an agent who experiences and knows. In order to be experienced and knowing, we need the physical body of the Jiva, and not only we need the physical body in the awakened state. Yeah? The physical body must be there, and the Jiva must be within that state called the awakened state, is a Vishwa, and then and only then the individual soul manifests, attached to a physical body, associate with the physical body in the awakened state. Then we have the experiencer and knower, okay? Only then Jivas can work out their karmas. The physical body is a counter across which Jivas transact its unfinished business in the world of cause and effect. Isvara is pure sattva, as we know. So it enjoys itself by itself without the aid of sense organs. So Isvara is not a super Jiva, as we hear often. Ramji says that. It's not a big Jiva. Okay? Isvara is pure knowledge, pure sattva, It somehow it grossifies from the most subtle until the gross, to become the entire universe, physically manifest, held together by its knowledge, by its laws. So this is the vision presented to us by Isvara as pure sattva, who has the potential to grossify itself, to bring about this jagat in which the jivas can enjoy and suffer. And in the process of enjoying and suffering, it develops wisdom, by connecting the dots, connecting one's actions with the parabhata karma, with the results, with the what's coming afterwards, the results. So therefore, Isvara, not being a jiva, it does not have karma. It enjoys itself by itself without the aid of sense organs. So we have sense organs, we have organs of actions, we have this whole structure, Why? Because we are designed to experience the world of objects, because in experience it, we can gain knowledge, we can gain wisdom, you understand? But Isvara being our head, the very nature of wisdom, it does not need to go through pleasure and pains, contacting objects, developing preference, and then suffering when things are adverse, and enjoy when things are in conformity with my... Now, Isvara is beyond all of that. It's beyond karma. It's just pure knowledge. It does not have avidya operating. Therefore, Isvara does not need the sense organs, and the sense organs of action, the organs of perception, does not need any of that. It's not an individual body. Isvara's body is sattva, pure sattva. It enjoys itself without the need of any organs, any instruments, and no need of any object. Okay, the jiva needs objects to enjoy, until the jiva becomes wiser and then start addressing, seeking, inquiring, and connecting to the true source of joy, which is not in the objects as we know, but it's in knowledge, it is in jnana. On the other hand, jivas, under the spell of avidya, enjoy and suffer intermittently, owing to the presence of rajas and tamas in the subtle body. So the whole thing is due to that. We need rajas and tamas in the subtle body. To the moment that the subtle body, it grossifies to become the physical jiva, and then this jiva is already under the spell of avidya, because unless there is enough rajas and tamas there, this subtle body does not stand, at least not in association with the physical body. It pervades, okay? The subtle body pervades the physical body, and then there is enough rajas and tamas there, so that makes it structured. But in doing so, the jiva suffers from avidya, okay? Avidya is nicely explained as the power to not understand what's going on, and then projecting, coming up with a response. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. And then I just come up with an idea. I don't know what I am. Okay, I come up with a good idea. I am the body. So this is immediately is the non-apprehension, the non-understanding of what's going on brings about, this other power, which is, I need to define myself. I need a response. I just, like Shemaya often used to say, the non-apprehension of one's true nature brings about the misapprehension as the body-mind. The non-apprehension, rajas, brings about, a projection, which is the misapprehension, I am the body. So that is due to rajas and tamas that seems to be needed in order for the subtle body associated physical body operate and process karma. More or less, constant enjoyment is possible if an individual subtle body is predominantly sattvic. So that is an interesting statement. So it says that it comes from Ranji because I know Ranji's teachings very well, and I know when the flavor of those commentaries are more like Paramarthananda Ramji. So he says here, more or less, constant enjoyment is possible. So we want to enjoy. If the mind is sattvic. So as we know, the mind can never be static. It's a flux in constant modification, change. So, but we know that when the mind is sattvic, we experience what? We experience more peace, more tranquility. We experience less desires, less fears. You understand? When the mind is sattvic, the mind becomes sattvic only as rajas and tamas shrink. You understand? Sattva is the background. Sattva is very, very subtle. It pervades the subtle body. And then we have the inclusions of rajas and tamas. So when the mind, when rajas and tamas diminish and the subtle body is more dominated by sattva, and then one enjoys what? The lack, the absence of desires and fears. The absence of desires and fears is what calls the experiential sensation, experience of happiness, joy, So we need to understand correctly this statement, more or less one enjoys most of the time if the mind is sattvic. It's not because when the mind is sattvic, you can always get what you want. No. It's because when the mind is really sattvic, you don't want many things in life. You just enjoy shanti. Okay? Remember, the joy is a state of mind. And the sattvic mind produces joy the same way fire produces light and heat. That's why we emphasize so much that our goal should be to develop as more and more sattva, although our end goal is not to have a sattvic pure mind. Our final, the end game here is to understanding that we are not any of these three mental conditions. Yeah? But it is within the mental condition called sattvic, in which the mind is peaceful, the mind is free of excess desires and aversions, fears, desires to gain, maintain, or push away things. When the mind is free from that mental perturbation, you understand? And then it experiences peace, satisfaction. So as Vedantins, we know that our goal is not to create that mind. Why? It's not reliable. The mind changes. It's enough that something comes, a telephone calls, and an email comes that upsets the mind. Anything can happen, and there goes my sattva. So we don't want to hold on to the sattvic, but we want to cultivate sattva, because a sattvic mind gives us a better chance to inquire and contemplate on these statements of the Panchadasi and understand our nature, which is beyond the three gunas, beyond all states of mind. You understand? Is that clear, Gert? Therefore, more or less, one can enjoy all the time if the subtle body is predominant such. Yes, it's true, but don't misread that statement and believe that, I can really enjoy constant satisfaction if my mind is sattvic, because then I'm going to get everything that I want. It's not that. Sattva is going to burn away a lot of those unnecessary desires and fears. So the following verse, 27, dividing each subtle element into two equal parts, and again, dividing the half of each one into four equal parts, Isvara makes the subtle elements so that the resulting gross elements would contain one half of the original nature and 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, and 1/8 of each one of the other original natures of the other elements, just as I explained, okay? So that's how Isvara brought about this grossification of the elements. The division of the elements accounts for the diversity of objects. So we have a huge variety of these objects. We have the subtle elements, and then it divides and combines, and it keeps providing, endless numbers of these primary elements. And not to say that this element, the primary elements, because every fire, water is in everything here. But then these primary elements, it just brings about other secondary levels of elements. It just keep bring about so many diversities of other elements other than just the primary 5 elements, okay? So these 5 elements are in everything, but it's enough we look into the chemical elements, and then we began to understand how this thing goes, and it spreads, and becoming this, all these aspects of every, aspect of every atom, and so on. So the variety, the countless variety of names and forms, is due to this initial division of the 5 subtle elements, okay, to create multiplicity, diversion, diversity, and in which there is never 2 flakes of snow that are going to be the same. Such is the power of creation. So all gross objects are types of alloys. So as we know, when we look into metallurgy, we see the mineral elements, the mineral realm. We see the rocks and the metals and gold and all these things. And then we see the alloys. The alloys are a combination of different minerals, okay? Primary minerals, and then you start mixing, and then you have, okay, it's alloy. I know because there was a time I was working with fashion accessory in Italy, and I knew very much what alloy was, It was a way to stretch a more precious metal, mixing other cheaper metals, to make something which is imitation of gold, imitation of silver, whatever, alloys. So the division, all gross objects are a kind of alloys. They are mixed up. There are several elements mixed up from the very primary elements, and then so many other elements are mixed up. The names are based on the domination portion in the mixture. So let's say we have a bar of gold, but in the gold there are 2, 3, 4 other elements, But the dominance there is gold. Oh no, this is already 75 gold. And the rest is copper and this and silver. There are a lot of other things. No, but we call it gold. I mean, it's very difficult to find pure gold. Nobody works with pure gold. It's too soft, they say. But they mix it. But we say, okay, now it's called gold because it's the dominant portion. Here's gold. Okay, and then there are inclusions of other minerals or elements or metals. So in that way, we can understand why we call our space, because space is the dominant portion. The dominant portion of the physical space is space, although there is air, water, fire, and earth in the space as well, So like that, every one of that is going to hold its name because it's the dominant portion in the mixture. In here, down here, in Jagat, everything is a mixture which begins with the building blocks of the creation, which is the three energies. And then out of these three energies, Isvara brings about the macrocosm subtle elements, and then the subtle elements, the tamatras, and then the grossified element. They all come from the three energies, the three gunas. The names based on the dominant. Subtle elements stand alone. They are called the tamatras. When they are pure, in their purity, they are tamatras. Okay? They stand alone. No, I am space, and I don't want to mix up with these smaller guys, these grosser guys, So I'm the more subtle here, I mean, everything depends on me, I don't depend on anybody here. And now you're asking me, Isvara, to give half of my purity to these grosser people so that, I can grossify to make a stage for this Jiva. Yes, I'm sorry. You're going to still be the more subtle, but you need to grossify here. So that's the game. So the names are based. Only the tamas are based. The names are based on the domination portion of the myth. Subtle elements stand alone. Only the tamasic part of the subtle elements grossifies. Look how nice. Now we start going to a little bit more complexity here. So only the tamasic part of the subtle elements grossify. So every element, every subtle element. So let's say space in the subtle element, subtle formation. It's pure. It does not have any inclusion of anything else. But it is already composed by the three energies. So space, it is already a certain grossification that Isvara brings about by mixing together the three energies, okay? And the space being the more subtle, it contains more sattva, okay? Whereas the earth being more dense, although it's very subtle because it's still on the subtle realm, but it contains more tamas because it's earth, okay? So now, every one of these five elements, everyone, space, air, fire, water, and so on, every one of these have the three energies in there. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So Sattva is the knowledge, that holds that element. So that cannot grossify. It's common sense. So now in Rajas, how Rajas can grossify? No, Rajas is the required energy to bring about this grossification. You understand? So what is going to grossify? Tamas. The tamasic element in each one of these subtle elements, and the tamasic energy in each one of these five subtle elements is what allows the grossification of the element, because it's only the tamasic aspect that grossify, okay? Only the tamasic part of each one of these subtle elements grossify. Is this clear? It's a little bit more subtle, but, Claudio?
There was problems with the audio, so I don't understand everything, but...
Oh, I had, it was cutting my audio? Or only for you?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
for all of you. Since when? Since when?
Here and there.
Okay. Okay, let me change
I more or less understand.
Let me change here my server here. Just a moment. Now I need a good connection for this class. Okay, let's give it a try. So we understood so far how the subtle elements grossify, yeah? And then we have the tamatras, the subtle elements in the macrocosm, subtle body, they are there, you know, and they are there in their purities. There is no question of mixing up, but they are already constituted by the three energies. Just imagine we have space, air, and then the last is earth. They are subtle elements, but it's easy to understand that space, although it is composed by three energies, three qualities, but space is very subtle, you know? It probably has very little earth, very little tamas, okay? It has very little tamas. Why? Because it's so subtle. Whereas the earth, as a subtle, pure element, it's more dense, okay? Although it is there in its subtle realm of subtle formation, okay? It's composed by the three gunas, okay? So this guna, in the case of the earth subtle elements, contains more tamas, is the most tamasic among the five subtle elements. Understood? So I'm presenting the two extremes. Okay, so the five elements, they go for the more subtle, and then it keeps grossifying even when it is in its purities, okay, in the subtle body. In the subtle body, they are called tamatras. They did not divide and recombine, they are up there, but they are composed by the three gunas. And the three energies as well. There is the most subtle of the three energies, which is sattva. And then there is rajas, that is a little more denser. And then there is tamas, which is much more dense. Okay? So we have, you see, these are the building blocks. From there, we bring the five subtle elements. But can you see how much room we have for infinite numbers of configurations, even from the three energies come down to the grossification of the tamatras to make the five gross elements. You know, there is so much room for different configurations, proportions, you understand? So what it was saying is that in the process of the grossification of each one of these elements, what grossifies is the rajasic, is the tamasic aspect of the element, okay? That is what grossifies. The idea and the energy are held to promote, you know, the efficient cause and the energetic cause, and the grossification comes from tamas. That's all I want to emphasize here. Rajas and sattva are used for the subtle body, tamas for the gross body. As we know, the subtle body, it requires enormous amount of sattva. Yeah? So we hear at right and left, the subtle body is a composition of these three elements, the three energies and the five subtle elements. Okay, we will hear that again. Oh, subtle body, yes, it's the three energies, the three gunas, plus the five subtle elements. And we hear that the subtle body, it requires a lot of sattva, okay? A lot of subtlety, because it's going to be invisible and it's going to be the mirror on which consciousness shines or reflects. It needs to be very, very sattvic. The physical body, it needs a lot more what? Tamas, because it grossifies to become physical, material, you know, tangible body. It requires a lot of tamas. That's why the physical body does not produce sentience. The physical body is just, you know, as inert as any piece of rock. You understand? It's just the five elements. It does not have the potential to know anything. The subtle body, because it contains more sattva, okay? So the rajas and sattva, why rajas is so necessary for the subtle body as well, okay? Because the subtle body is very, very dynamic. It is the subtle body that needs all these energies, the physiological system, the digestion, and all these different systems, you know? The 5 physiological systems, they are pure, intelligent air. They are energy, just moving. Okay, this subtle body now is going to, pervade this physical body, and it's going to vivify and activate and animate and keep it as regulated as possible to be functioning. So it requires a lot of rajas to activate such a dense machinery. You understand? So we know that subtle body needs the pranas, these energies, okay? Because it's from there that the whole equipment is going to be operated. And at the same time, it needs what? It needs a lot of sattva, because it's so intelligent designed. As in the macrocosmic, it has no intelligence manifest. There is this beautiful, wonderful ignorance, there is just this ocean of no reflectivity of tamas, indifferentiate tamas. So, but when it comes to the subtle realm, the subtle body, we need a lot of sattva. So this sattva is going to propitiate or concede to every jiva atma the faculty of discrimination and knowledge, determination, decision, and his intelligence, this knowledge, individual knowledge of the individual jiva is possible due to this very, very sattvic body called the subtle body. The physical body, why the physical body is absolutely needed? Because although the subtle body is so beautiful, it's so sattvic, a lot of rajas and tamas and very little rajas and such and very little tamas, but it needs the physical body, because it's only through the physical bodies that it can interact with the physical world. Jagata is the physical material cosmos, universe, and we need the instruments by which this subtle body can interact with Jagata. Okay? Makes sense? Okay. So therefore, rajas and sattva are used for the subtle body. Tamas are used for the gross body. So it is already 1 hour. Can I go for another 5, or we just call it for today? I'm just going to read the headline for our next class, the 28th. From these composite elements, the cosmic egg arose, and from it, so what are the elements? The 3 energies, from this most subtle, the sattva guna, until tamaguna, these 3 energies, and then the 5 subtle elements came to create the cosmic egg, okay? And from the cosmic egg, it evolved all the worlds. So this is a very, very interesting concept. From this subtle, the macrocosm subtle body, the mind of Isvara, so to speak, from there, all the worlds evolved. And when the Vedas talk about all the worlds, talk about what we call lokas, it says that there are 6 lokas above and 7 below where we are. Okay, 6 above and 7 below. So all this universe, all these different universe, these worlds, evolved from this cosmic egg, the subtle body, okay, the macrocosm, The objects, it evolved all the worlds. It evolved also the objects of experience of all these worlds and the bodies required for all experience in all different worlds. So the subtle body contains so much knowledge, this cosmic egg, that immediately creates all these different locus. And not only it creates, the bodies required to experience all these different locus. As we know, we need in a specific body to experience in a specific realm, let's say, so to speak. So when we look into our Jiva personal experience, we know that we experience three states. The waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. So if I am awake and I want to enter the dream world, let's say, no, I love to dream. I had such a beautiful dream yesterday. I want to have a nap now and go back to that beautiful dream. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So the first thing that we need to do is to drop the physical body. We need to drop. We cannot enter the dream world with the physical body. We need another medium, another vehicle. So we need to drop the physical body, and then we need to get into our dream body so that we experience the dream world. We know that we experience the dream world, and we know that we don't experience the physical body because we see what we do. We see, and our physical eyes was closed, right? So there is a body for each one of these states. Likewise, there is a body for each one of these locus, okay? So Vedanta does not go much into this topic because Vedanta's purpose is to make us to understand that we are the light that illumines and reveals all bodies and all different locus and worlds in the world of duality, in the world of experience. When Hiranyagarbha identifies with the totality of all gross bodies, it's known as Vaisvanara. When Taijasa identifies with the gross bodies of animals, men and God, it's known as Vishwa. This is very, very nice. We're going to leave it for the next class. It gives room for a lot of esoteric stuff if we are in the mood, huh? Or not. Okay. So I think it's enjoyable to have a 60 minutes and we can stay more focused and begin more on time. Huh? And so I'm available next Thursday. We're gonna see how it goes. If enough people show up, we keep it. If most people drop, and then we may drop the Thursdays altogether. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you a lot. Thank you, my friends. Nice meeting you again. Love you, and we meet again whenever Isvara wills. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love you. Love you. Love you.
Thanks, Alinda. Bye now.
Thank you, Mark.